Today I want to tell you a story so raw it still tastes like dust and blood, set in the unforgiving heart of the Old West, where sunsets burn red and mercy is a dangerous mistake. It's a place where broken laws and broken souls collide, and one choice can follow a man for a lifetime. It all began with a single moment, a dying woman in a dark alley, small enough to ignore, but powerful enough to change everything. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Ever put a bullet through a man and then found yourself lying beside the woman he left behind? Didn't think so? Maybe you've lived cleaner than I did? Or maybe you never chose the wrong moment to draw on the wrong bastard. I sit with a mouthful of rot gut, watching the sun sink into the sand like it's dodging a debt. And all that stays with me are her eyes. Dark. Hard. The kind that pass judgment before a word is spoken. The first time she really looked at me, truly looked, she knew. She knew I was the one who ended her husband at Apache Pass, knew my shot found his heart, and still she let my hands near her. You call that wrong? So do I. Out here in '83, right and wrong never shared a table. One of them usually stepped into the street and started firing. I wore the badge in Silver Creek 8 long years. Crow Vance lawman. I enforced the rules, did what a man in my place was expected to do. Then one night I found her bleeding in a back alley, and everything I believed about duty, honor, justice, every last bit of it turned to ash. Maybe I should have left her there. Would have been simpler. Cleaner. But I didn't. And that choice just one, it split my life in two. It was 1883, and I'd already buried more death than a man should carry. Odelia Vance had been in the ground 3 years by then. Cancer took her slow while I sat useless at her side, holding her hand, watching the light go out. Afterward, I moved to a cabin 3 miles beyond town. I built it myself. Every nail driven like penance. Out there with nothing but wind on wind on wind and coyotes, I could dose myself with laudanum and pretend the past didn't follow. It always did. That October night, I was riding my rounds. Silver Creek wasn't much. A saloon, a general store, a handful of houses scattered like forgotten dice. The kind of place where the dry-water folk knew your sins before you did. I heard sounds behind Murphy's saloon, not the sloppy noise of drunk cowboys. Something worse, something that twisted my gut. I found her folded against wooden crates like a broken doll someone tossed aside. An Apache woman. I knew at once. Silver jewelry still circling her wrists, ritual scars along her shoulders. She'd been beaten bad, carefully, deliberately, the sort meant to teach obedience. She was still breathing. Barely. Listen close. In New Mexico Territory in 1883, Apache blood was worth less than spit. I'd helped enforce that truth for years, looked away when justice got handled in alleys and back rooms, told myself that's just how the frontier worked. But when she opened her eyes and fixed them on me, really fixed them, something split open in my chest, something I thought had been buried with Odelia. Help me. She murmured it, clear, flawless English, which caught me off guard. I should have turned away, should have let the night finish what it started. But I didn't. I lifted her onto my horse and rode hard for my cabin. She weighed next to nothing, all sharp bones and old bruises. Her fingers kept raking my coat as we moved. Her breath came rough. Let me die, like dragging her out of that alley was some kind of cruelty. I told her it wasn't happening, though I didn't know where the words came from. They came anyway. At the cabin, I laid her on my bed, the only one, and set to cleaning her wounds. When she came around, she fixed me with the stare of a cornered wildcat. "You're the sheriff," she said, eyes cutting to my badge. "That's right." "Then you should arrest me." I stopped cloth dripping in my hand. "For what?" "For being Apache in your town." The truth hung between us like gun smoke. I asked her name instead of answering. "Naira," she said after a long pause. Over the next few days, her story came out in pieces. She'd been taken in a raid 6 months earlier, sold off to settle gambling debts by desperate Apache men chasing whiskey, passed through a brothel in Santa Fe, then traded again until she landed in Silver Creek. The beating came when she refused what a customer thought he'd bought. "You could have given in," I said one night while changing her bandages. "Lived." She looked at me like I'd asked her to cut off her own arm. She spat blood. "A dog lasts longer than I would if I bent for every white man with $1. I'd rather be dead." I understood that. I'd been dying slow for 3 years myself. On the 4th night, everything shifted. I was wrapping fresh cloth around her ribs. They were healing still sore when her hand closed on my wrist stronger than it had any right to be. "I know you," she said. Her voice had changed. Colder. I froze. The lamp fluttered. Her eyes widened, then sharpened cold as a skinning knife. I knew it then. I was already dead. I just hadn't hit the ground yet. "Apache Pass," she whispered. 2 summers ago. The memory slammed into me. The cavalry charge. The canyon filled with smoke and screams. An Apache warrior fighting like a devil, dropping 3 men before my shot caught his heart. I remembered him. Tall. War paint. Fighting to the last breath. "You killed my husband." The silence stretched tight, bowstring ready. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. "Tall man," I said at last. "War paint. He fought to the end." "Core," she said, and her voice broke on the name. He had been war chief of their band. I remembered him clearly. It took 3 men to bring him down, and even then he died on his feet. "Do you remember the women and children you left without protection?" she asked, her voice trembling with fury. "Do you remember how we starved that winter?" I had remembered. Too often. Lost sleep over it. Laudanum never washed it all away. "I remember," I said, barely louder than a breath. She forced herself upright, ignoring the pain in her ribs. "Then why save me? Why not let me die and be done with it?" I looked at her. Really looked. Hell. She looked like something the desert had tried to kill and failed. Still beautiful in the same way a loaded Winchester is beautiful. Everything Odelia Vance had been before sickness hollowed her out. "Because I'm tired of death trailing me," I said. The words surprised us both. You might think that should have been the end of it, that she'd grab a kitchen knife and bury it in my ribs the first chance she got. I would have deserved it. But that isn't what happened. What grew, instead, was a tense truce. She stopped trying to kill me when my back was turned. I kept riding in from town to check on her. We didn't talk much, but we learned how to share the same space without violence hanging between us. I found out she could read and write, rare for an Apache woman. Her mother, Iska, had been taken in by missionaries as a child, learned English before returning to her people. Naira had grown up caught between 2 worlds, never fully belonging to either. "Like you," she said one evening. "What do you mean you wear the badge," she said, "but you don't believe in the law? You live among white men, but you don't think like them. You stand in between." She was right. I'd been standing in between for a long time, between living and dying duty, and conscience the man I was, and the man I should have been. 3 weeks after I found her, something shifted. I came back one evening to find her standing at the window. She'd washed her hair. It fell down her back like black silk. The bruises on her face had faded to dull yellow shadows. The swelling was gone. For the first time I truly saw her. She was beautiful, dangerously so. She caught me staring. Instead of turning away or covering herself, she held my gaze. The room thickened until I could taste it, gun oil, sweat, and something that made my hands ache for skin instead of a gun grip. "You want me?" she said. Not a question. My throat dried out. I tried to answer, but nothing came. "The man who killed my husband wants me," she went on. Her voice was soft, unsettling. "Strange, isn't it?" Before I could reply, boots thudded on the porch. I reached for my gun and motioned her toward the back room. She moved as quiet as smoke. "Sheriff, you in there?" It was Sedge Rowan, young, ambitious, mean as a rattler. He'd been eyeing my position since the day I hired him. I opened the door, blocking his view inside. "Evening, Sedge." He shoved past me without manners and swept his eyes around the cabin. They landed on the extra plate on the table. On the woman's hair ribbon I'd left draped over a chair. I'd been having company. His smile was cold as January. "That's my business?" he said, stepping toward the back room. I stepped in front of him, blocking the doorway. "You'd better leave, Sedge." "Or what?" he sneered. "You gonna shoot your own deputy?" He laughed, but there wasn't a trace of humor in it. "Face it, Sheriff. Your time's done. The territory wants someone younger. Someone who knows how to deal with the Indian problem the right way." Then he was gone, but we both knew he'd be back. With men, with questions, with rope. When I returned to the back room, Naira was standing by the window. Moonlight washed her face pale. "He knows," she said. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." She turned toward me. "They'll come tomorrow. Or tonight." She hesitated, something unreadable crossing her face. "Tonight I choose what happens to me." That night I lay on the floor while she took the bed. I listened to her breathing, knowing Sedge Rowan would return by morning, knowing my badge was finished my life, too, most likely. Still, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. The soft sound of cloth made me turn my head. Naira stood beside my bedroll. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, a thin cotton shift clinging to her in the moonlight, slipping through the window. She looked unreal. "Sheriff." I pushed myself up. "You should rest. I have rested." She knelt close, near enough that I felt the warmth of her skin. "For 3 years, since Cor died, I've known only anger and fear." Her hand pressed against my chest, over my heart. "But with you I feel something else." "Naira." "You killed my husband," she said steadily. "Yes, but you saved my life. You showed me mercy when no one else would." Her fingers traced the old scars on my chest marks from my cavalry days. "We are both walking dead." She lifted her eyes. "But tonight, we could be alive. Some things don't belong to words even in a story like this. But I'll say this much: when she kissed me, it was desperate and fierce, like someone clawing for air. When I pulled her close, months of buried wanting broke loose all at once. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "I'm sure of nothing," she said softly. "But I choose this." She met my eyes. "I choose you." It began slow, both of us, half afraid the other might still reach for a blade. Then the hunger took over, and slow wasn't possible anymore, her hands gripping my shoulders, mine tangled in her hair, breath and heat filling the dark. Restraint didn't last. She rose above me, framed by moonlight hair spilling wild. Her movements were both taking and yielding, claiming and being claimed at once. I held her hips, grounding us both as our breathing turned rough and urgent, the world shrinking down to nothing but this. Her skin against mine. The heat. The shock of feeling fully alive for the first time in years. Afterward, she lay against my chest, her fingers drifting in quiet patterns. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. I held her closer. "We leave tonight. I know places south of the border. Mexico." "No." Her answer was steady. "I won't run. I won't turn you into an outlaw for my sake. This is my choice." She lifted her head to look at me. In the moonlight, her eyes had no bottom, and neither did mine. We lay there in the dark, both of us knowing morning would bring consequences we couldn't escape. Still, for those few hours, we touched something neither of us believed was left to us. We had hope. We were still arguing about Mexico when the riders came. It was just past midnight. I heard the horses before I saw them, that hollow sound of unshod hooves on hard ground. Ash Ridge men. I reached for my gun, but the cabin was already ringed. Through the window I counted 6 riders. Torches. Painted faces. Warriors. They'd followed Sedge Rowan's trail straight to us. Naira whispered it at once, understanding without being told. The voice that called out was strong, commanding, the kind that carried men into battle. Her face drained, pale as fresh snow. "My brother," she said. "Tazek, Kor's brother. He's come for me. I checked my rifle. 6 men. Good odds for dying. No odds at all for living. What does he want?" She closed her eyes. "Justice. By our law, I have dishonored my husband's memory. The penalty is death." I moved to the window. The warriors sat their horses like stone weapons, ready, disciplined, deadly. The war chief called again, his words, cutting clean through the desert night. Naira translated her voice, hollow. "He says I have 30 seconds to come out or they burn the cabin. Now listen. I wasn't a hero. Never had been. I'd spent 20 years taking orders, enforcing laws, doing what men expected. I'd killed because I was told to. I'd looked away when justice turned ugly because it was easier than standing up. But looking at Naira, this woman who'd survived what would have broken most people who'd chosen life, when death would have been simpler, I understood something. I'd spent my whole damn life killing for pay. Seemed about time I died for something that mattered." "There's another way," I said quietly. When I turned to her, "I go out there. I keep them busy long enough for you to reach my horse. You ride hard for Mexico. Don't stop. Don't look back. No." She seized my arm. 6 warriors. You'll die. Maybe. But you'll live. Without honor. As an exile. Alive. My voice came out sharp, almost angry. That's what matters. She studied me for a long moment, really saw me. Not the sheriff. Not the soldier. Not the man who killed her husband. Just me. "I love you," she said simply. It felt like a spur driven straight through my chest. Odelia Vance had spoken those words once a lifetime ago in another world. I'd sworn I'd never hear them again. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it. "Now go." She didn't move. Stubborn woman. "If you step out there," she said, "I go with you. Like hell you will. Then we stay inside and burn together." We locked eyes, 2 people who'd found something worth holding in the worst possible place, knowing there wasn't a clean choice left. The war chief called out again, impatience sharpening his voice. 10 seconds, Naira translated. That settled it. I opened the door and stepped into the torchlight rifle leveled. The Apache war chief sat his horse about 10 yards out, painted for battle. Younger than I expected, maybe 30, but he carried himself like a man who'd led warriors into hell and brought them back alive. "I am Crow Vance," I called. Might as well use the name. I wasn't likely to need it much longer. "Sheriff of Silver Creek." "The woman is under my protection." His laugh cut hard. "Your protection means nothing, white man. She has shamed our people. She must answer." "Then you answer to me first." Behind me, Naira stepped out of the cabin. Damn stubborn woman. "Brother," she called in Apache, then switched to English for my sake. "It's true. I have dishonored Kor's memory." The Ash Ridge men stirred low anger rippling through them. "I lay with the man who killed him," she went on. "I did it freely, by my own choice." She gestured toward me. "He could have taken me like others did. He didn't. He saved my life and asked nothing in return. If that is dishonor, then I accept it." The war chief's face stayed stone. "You speak of honor while lying with your husband's killer. I speak of choice," Naira said. "Something denied to me for months, something Kor would have wanted for me." "Do not speak his name," he snapped. "He was my husband before he was your brother," she said, steel in her voice. "He told me that if he fell in battle, I should live. Choose my own path. I am choosing." Silence pulled tight. I kept my rifle steady, knowing this could break either way. The war chief dismounted and walked forward. I raised the barrel. "Peace, Sheriff," he said in clean English. I would speak with my sister. I didn't lower the rifle, but I didn't fire. He stopped a few feet from Naira. They spoke in Apache for several minutes. I couldn't follow the words, but I read the language of bodies argument, pleading, anger, grief, then something like understanding. At last the war chief turned to me. "You love her," a strange question from a man who'd come to kill. "I do. Enough to die for her, I already planned on it." He studied me a long moment, then nodded once. "My brother died with honor," he said. "You fought him fairly, I am told. In battle these things happen," he said. He glanced back at Naira. "But she cannot return to our people. This choice makes her other, separate." "I understand," Naira spoke softly. "Do you?" Her brother's voice carried grief. "She will be alone, neither white nor Apache. No people left to claim you. I will have myself," she said. "That is enough." The war chief studied her for a long moment. Then he did something I didn't expect. He slipped a small leather pouch from around his neck and pressed it into her hands. "Our mother's medicine bag," he said. "Take it. Remember who you are, even if you walk a different path." Naira accepted it with trembling fingers. "Thank you, brother." He swung back into the saddle. The Ash Ridge men followed. Before riding off, he looked at me one last time. "Protect her, Sheriff. Or I will return. You won't need to." They disappeared into the dark torches fading. Naira and I stood in the sudden quiet, hardly believing we were still alive. She turned to me, tears spilling down her face. "We are free." "We are," I said, then hesitated. "But Sedge Rowan will be back by morning and he won't come alone." "Then we leave," she said. "Tonight, together." This time I didn't argue. We rode out before dawn, heading south toward Mexico. I left my badge on the cabin table with a note resigning my post. After 20 years of following the law, I was breaking it in the one way that mattered. Sedge Rowan arrived with a posse 3 hours after sunrise, found the empty cabin, found my badge. They tracked us for 2 days before giving up at the border. Mexico greeted us the way it greets all fugitives, with suspicion and indifference. We settled in a small town near the Sierra Madre, where no one asked questions if you paid your bills and kept your head down. I found work as a ranch hand. Nira learned to cook local food and tend a garden. We built a small adobe house with our own hands. Some mornings she woke crying, grieving her people and the life she'd lost. Some nights I dreamed of Apache Pass, of the men I'd killed, the life I'd left behind. We carried our ghosts the way everyone does. But we carried something else too harder to name, impossible to deny. A bed, a roof that mostly didn't leak, 2 horses that hadn't been shot out from under us yet. It was enough. That was 40 years ago. Naira died last spring. Cancer, same thief that took Odelia Vance. I held Naira's hand as she passed the way I couldn't with my first wife. She was 73, and still the most beautiful woman I'd ever known. Before she went, she told me she never regretted leaving her people, never regretted choosing me over honor. "Honor is cold," she said. "Love is warm." I chose warmth. I buried her on a hill overlooking the valley with Iska's medicine bag and a silver bracelet I bought for our first anniversary. The priest said words I didn't hear. What mattered was the life we built, not the ceremony that ended it. Now I sit with my whiskey watching another desert sunset, and I keep turning over the matter of choice. The night I chose to lift a dying woman instead of stepping past her. The moment she chose to love the man who had ended her husband's life. All the small decisions that quietly stack up until they become a lifetime. Was I wrong, maybe? Hell, probably. But I was given 40 years with a woman who made me feel alive again. 40 years of waking beside someone who chose me every single day, knowing exactly who I was and what I had done. That has to count for something. Now I sit here alone, an old man with too many memories, listening to the desert breathe as the sun sinks low. I think about how one choice can bend a road forever, how another might damn you or save you. I chose love over honor, warmth over rules. And if that path led me through hell, at least it was my own, walked with open eyes, not one chosen for me by fear or by other men's laws. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso Legal, barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals narration and script development, the emotional tone editing and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.